Welcome back, folks. Well, as we get a new round of ugly economic numbers, House Minority Leader John Boehner calling for President Obama to axe his economic team, namely Economic Advisor Larry Summers and Treasury Chief Tim Geithner. But how much can we really blame the White House and the president for the sluggish economy? Radio talk show host and Chapman University law professor Hugh Hewitt is my guest now. Here's my question for you, Hugh. We've seen calls for the president to fire the Attorney General, Eric Holder, for him to fire DHS Secretary Janet Napolitano, and now for him to fire his economic team. Is it really his team, or is it the president? I mean, these people, are they not embodying the president's, the policies that this president supports?
That's a great point, Megyn, but it's, of course, they can't fire the president, and the president isn't supposed to be an economist. He's supposed to have hired economists. And these economists, in the form of Mr. Summers and Secretary Geithner, they're like the skipper of the Titanic aiming for the iceberg. Everything that they have advanced has failed, and the housing numbers yesterday bring home with a cold reality that there isn't any optimism in this economy, not only what has been done before, but over this massive tax hike that the president and Secretary Geithner and Larry Summers are pushing in January.
And let's just talk about that, because people may not have followed that news yesterday about the housing sales, because it was dire news. Stu Varney came on. The sales of existing homes, so not the newly constructed, but existing homes, dropped 27%. In July over the prior month, which was the steepest one-month decline since the figures were first compiled in 1968. And new homes went down 12.4%, and on the numbers went. But the basic news is that the housing market looks awful right now, according to these numbers.
Awful. Awful. In fact, housing normally leads the economy into a recovery, and housing is at best idling in many places in the country. A few bright spots out there, but generally it's a dark, dark horizon for housing with an inventory number that's back to 1999 levels. And that's because housing reflects people's long-term aspirations and hopes for the economy. And right now they don't know that they're going to be allowed to keep much money. They don't know what Obamacare is going to do to their employment situation. They're afraid to commit their resources. You've heard the phrase capital in hiding. Well, placebo economics has produced capital in hiding. They know that what has been coming out of this White House and out of the Larry, Curly, and Moe of housing, Barney Frank, Chris Dodd, and Andrew Cuomo, they're still running things on the Hill or in New York, but it's Geithner and Summers are the only ones who should take responsibility for this. And it goes back to, in the Navy, Megyn, when you run a ship aground, typically you're relieved of command. They have run this ship aground. We are stopped dead in the water, and all they want to propose to us is higher taxes. That will not work. And in fact, I think you saw in Arizona last night and Florida last night, people know, and they're going to vote that need for change in November. But we really can't wait that long. Housing can't wait that long.
But what is President Obama going to do? Let's say he listens to John Boehner, which we don't expect. But let's say he listens to John Boehner. He says, you know what, you're right. Summers gone. Geithner gone. Orszag already resigned. Who's he going to replace them with that would please somebody like John Boehner? Nobody. I mean, President Obama has a certain way of looking at this economy and how to fix it, and you may or may not agree with that, but he's not going to replace those guys with anybody Boehner or the GOP is going to like any better.
Well, there's got to be at least one or two Democratic economists out there who believe in the efficacy of tax cuts, Megyn. I don't know who they are. Christine Romer allegedly was one of them, and she's been forced out by Larry Summers and Tim Geithner.
You got some Democrats like Kent Conrad who are in the Senate who are already talking about not raising taxes on the American people in January, as the Democrats plan to do.
Yeah, there's one, and you can go back to the Clinton era, and you could find anyone out there who has an actual experience of seeing an economy grow and not panicking by the fact that it takes a bold move to repeal the decision to raise the tax rates. And I think it comes back to that. Between now and November, the only issue on the table for the American people is, on top of all this bad news, do you want those Bush tax cuts to expire? Do you want even more bad economic news? And I think that Geithner has already said, he's on record as saying he wants those tax hikes repealed. So that is the minimum that's got to go. He's got to change his mind, because every time he says that, he drives markets down, he depresses house prices, he hurts employment, and we cannot get going forward until people stop having the hand of the government in their wallet.
Yeah, the administration, at least with respect to the top earners, continues to say it wants those tax cuts to go away, which even some top Democrats have said is not a great idea in this economy. But they're in charge, and we'll see what they do. Hugh, it's always a pleasure.
Thanks, Megyn. Good to be here.
Thank you, sir.